Hello, everyone. Yes, same outfit, same hairdo, everything as last week. Again, I am filming this all in one day. And my computer is on. Okay, so today we are going to work on putting together the lining panels. We're going to be putting in the two water bottle sleeves, the laptop sleeve. We're going to work on that. And yeah, we're going to put the lining together. So this should be actually a pretty fast class. Yeah, and then we will break and then we'll come back to putting it all together on day 4, unless we get to it today. We will see how far I get. All right. So again, make sure you put your name down below in the comments so I know that you were here. Again, thank you so much for attending the July 2024 Thursday classes for the Mercury modified Mercury convertible bag that we are doing. Again, these classes are pre-recorded because it is my month off in July. So yeah, I hope everybody's having a great summer. And how about we get to this class? All right, so let's finish up the exterior panels and then we can get the lining panels done. And then hopefully we'll also get to putting the exterior together. We will see how far we get. Okay, so you should have your front and back panels complete and backed with foam. The very first thing we're going to do is on the back panel here. Actually, no, we're not going to do those just yet. We're going to work on our strap strips and our connectors. So we're going to work on the front and the back at the same time. Okay, so those are going to be the connectors for the back and the connectors for the front. Now we are looking at page 22, step 47 if you're doing the large backpack. If you're doing the small backpack, make sure you move on to step 6 on the back panel, because the front one doesn't have handles on the side. But if you wanted handles on this side, then follow this. Just make sure you're following the measurements for the front panel because they are slightly different. Okay, so we are going to measure down on the right side what is stated in step 47 there. These measurements are very, very, very important. Make sure that's nice and straight. Same with the back one. I also help because I got my center notches there just to mark the center line down as well. It'll just help with the placement of our straps really good. Make sure it is definitely centered. Yep. 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 Okay. And now we're going to, as in picture F, you want to measure down a little bit more and make a second line from that first line. On both. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is measure from the center line. I find it easiest to do this and draw more lines. This is going to help us with our placement hugely here. Okay, and then we want to draw one more line as per the measurements in step 50 up from this bottom line. This is all for our handle placement. On the back one, you'll want to draw it on the center line as well, because that's where we're going to put that O-ring one. just like so. All righty. So next, I'm going to put some double-sided tape on the back side of all my connectors. Just along the bottom short side. Okay, now for the rectangle rings, these lines we drew down here, we want to put them to the left or the right, depending which side of those connectors. So right at that line that we drew there. So this one is to the left of that line. This one will be to the right of this line. And do the same on this side. Again, these connectors are added in. This is where the handle placement is if you didn't do the connectors like this. Left of that line. Come on, tape. Right of this line. And then the O-ring, we're going to put nice and centered down the center. Like, so make sure it's nice and centered, like that. Then we're going to take these to the machine and we're just going to baste these bottom parts down. Oops, dropping stuff everywhere. So again, we're just going to baste just along, just with a 1/4 inch or so, just along the bottom of the connectors so they stay in place. Now, if you aren't doing rivets, I'll be putting rivets in these in the end. But if you aren't, within those lines, those long lines that we made, you may want to do an X in there if you aren't doing rivets. But I am doing rivets, so I'm not doing those little X's. That just helps secure and strengthen those stitches a little bit further. But if you're doing rivets, that does the exact same thing. Okay, that's the back side done. I'll cut my threads later. I'm just gonna kind of scooch it over. Okay, I'll meet you back at the table. Okay, once that's done, we're going to take our 2 strap strips. We're going to draw a center line. Which is it? Draw a center line down at the center of both. And then we're going to take some double-sided tape. We're going to fold those long ends into those center lines. Oops. Okay, and then take some more tape and we want to put it down the center of the wrong side. This is going to help it hold in place. Let go. There we go. All right. Let's do our front panel first. Make sure your rectangular rings are up and out of the way. We're going to take the tape off the back and we're going to line it up in between those lines that we made. Nice and straight. Just like so. And same with the back panel. So I'm going to go to the, that's fine. And then we're going to go and we're going to top stitch across the top there, that top folded edge, and then across the bottom folded edge as well for both of those. I'm just going to scooch down the side here so I don't have to break my thread, and then go across the other side. That's one done. All right. Okay, so I think I've changed my mind. We're going to end up putting the exterior and their linings together last class because they won't take that long and they're kind of the same process. So for homework, if you're adding rivets, you will do that now. So I'm going to add rivets. So it's catching the connectors here. So about halfway down right there and right there, as well as I'm going to put one here and here. And I'm going to make sure that they are back with scraps of Decovil Heavy. So again, here, 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 there, and there, just like that. Okay, so that is the front panel pretty much done. So we can set that aside for now. And we are going to continue working with this back panel. So let me figure out what page we are on. Dun, dun, dun. Let me double check. Okay. So now we are looking at page 27. Let's make sure this is for the large one. That's for the small. So it's really hard when they are both on the same pattern for placement. So what we're going to be doing next is connecting these. I just got to make sure that they are the same for both. I'm not sure if they are. So for the small backpack, it's showing page 26 for those. And the large backpack, let me look. Just trying to find the instructions for it. Bear with me. Okay, so we're not going to do the connector triangles just yet on the large one. We're going to pull out our trolley sleeve pieces. So that is on page 29, step 50 is where we're at now. So grab your trolley sleeve, make sure you have it the right width, because if it's this way, it'll be too short, but if it's this way, it should be the same width. We're going to fold it up, right sides together, and clip along the top. My camera kind of shifted. Sorry guys. Okay, and then we're going to sew along that top seam with the seam allowance stated in step 50. Oh my goodness. Wow, I definitely played some bobbin chicken because I ran out of bobbin right when I finished that top stitching. Wowzers. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just on these corners, I'm just going to trim them up on an angle just a little bit like that. Just help reduce some of that bulk in that corner. And then you can go ahead and you can turn this tube through. Much easier to do if you've used cotton. Just going to say. Of course, I used a marine vinyl, so it's just a little bit harder to turn it through. So I'm also going to explain how to turn this into a slip pocket if you don't want the trolley sleeve. As soon as I get this through. Come on, keep going. There we go. Okay. So we're going to finger press and roll that seam. Hold it with some clips to prepare for top stitching. Okay, once you have that, press it down good, and along that folded edge, put some clips to hold that fold nice and flat as well. Oops. So I'm actually going to make this folded edge the top of my trolley sleeve because I like the look of it the best. So if you are doing the trolley sleeve, you're going to go ahead and you're going to top stitch across the top and the bottom. If you are doing a slip pocket, just top stitch the top and don't top stitch the bottom. So trolley sleeve, top stitch both. If you're making this into a large slip pocket, just top stitch the top. So I'm top stitching both because I am doing a trolley sleeve. All right. All right, so that's what that looks like. Now, if you look at what step are we on? Step 52, it's going to tell you how far up we are going to place this. So what I'm going to do is on the back side, I'm going to put a small strip of double-sided tape. You don't have to do this. You can definitely hold it with clips on the sides too. This is just, and do not put the oh no, I lied. I don't want double-sided tape. I'm doing a trolley sleeve. If you're doing a slip pocket, you can put that there, but no, I'm doing a trolley sleeve. I need to keep that open. So what we want to do is we want to measure up from the bottom as per those pattern measurements, which is right about there. And we're going to line this up with our ruler nice and straight and then clip those raw sides in place. Oh, I would have been mad at myself if I put that double-sided tape there. So if, make sure it's straight here. Yeah. If you're doing the trolley sleeve, you will just baste down these sides. But if you are doing a slip pocket, you'll baste down here and then top stitch across here and up there, and that'll create that pocket. We're going to do 2 steps at the same time at the machine here. So now we are on step 53. Where did I put my, oh, there. We're going to place our rectangle or triangles. So for the large backpack, it is telling us how much to put them up on the side here. So I'm actually just going to draw a line where it's going to go. And that is where you're going to position the end of the triangle, just like so. You want them to be angling up towards the center. Put those in place. I'm doing this just so I can do a continuous base down the side, all in one swoop. Goes together pretty fast, hey? It's not too bad at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and baste all the way down there. And again, if you're turning this into a slip pocket, you'll go baste, top stitch, baste. If you're doing a trolley sleeve, it's just baste down the sides. Now the reason we do this after we're putting the foam on is so when we do the rivets and when we sew on that top strap connector, the foam just helps give it a little extra security and strength. That's my way of thinking anyways. Okay. Okay, so this is what we got so far. If you have any overhang of anything, like I can see my strip is going longer, so I'm just going to trim that off. Same with on this side, it's a little bit longer, so I'll trim it off. Now, all we need to do now, besides the rivets to prep for this, is remember, and do you know what? I basted mine on, so I just took that basting off now, is remember we left the top open here, and the reason for that is we want to take away as much bulk where we will have our zipper as possible. So along this top, you're going to measure down 1/2 inch. Again, this isn't in the pattern. This is a Brandy thing. 1/2 inch. And you're going to cut the foam away from that 1/2 inch. Just like so. And then I'm going to just take some tape to help hold that foam in. And that's going to get caught in the top stitching later on. So it'll hold that foam in place later on. I just like to use some double-sided tape just to hold the foam nice and flat. Just like that, so it doesn't go anywhere. Let's do the same with the opposite side. Again, I had to pick out stitches because I basted my foam on. Even when I told you not to do it, I still did it. Foam away. And then I'm going to do one more thing, and you can decide if you want to do it or not. I like it when my pockets are sitting on the outside of the foam. I just think it gives a little bit more cushioning for whatever's in the pocket. And then when your pocket's full, it doesn't show through the outside as much. So you can decide if you're going to do this next thing or not. Completely up to you. Okay. So I'm going to kind of feel where my pocket is through my foam. So I can feel right here. I got my finger along there. And I'm just going to pull away just the foam. Nothing else, just the foam. I'm going to put a cut into it. Where's my zipper tape? It's right there. And I'm just going to cut a rectangle big enough to be able to pull that pocket up to the other side. This doesn't have to look pretty. Again, you can decide if you want to do this or not. It's completely up to you. And you can pull that pocket up and under. And I just find that when you have something in that pocket, because it's behind the foam, it's got extra squishiness and it doesn't show what's in there as much. So I'm going to do the same with the front. I like to take more double-sided tape and just put it on this side of the pocket just to hold it down so it doesn't fold up, just like that. And this one, you'll only do it for the top one. I wouldn't worry about doing it for the bottom one because that is pretty much the pocket. So just this top one. Again, make sure you're only cutting your foam. Pull my pocket out. Bring it to this side of the foam. just like that. Okay, so again, homework for these rivets. Put your rivets in. Next class is going to be a full class. All right, so in case you guys wonder, if you notice my intros may be a little bit off from what we were doing here because I pre-recorded their intros before doing this. I did them all at the same time with an agenda of what to have done, and here I am changing my mind partway through. So if it doesn't quite match what I said in the intro, that is why. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, put these aside and bring out your side panels. Okay, so here is another Brandy modification. We are adding a crossbody connector. So this is the triangle or rectangle range you had. We have our pockets all prepped. We've marked our top centers. And what we want to do is we want to measure in 1.5 inches from that top, nice and centered. I like to use a 1-inch ruler to do this because it's the same width as my connecting hardware. So I can mark that center line down and I can draw a 1-inch line straight across like this for perfect placement. Same with the other side, 1.5 inches down. Just like so. Then you're going to take your connectors. Remember the ones we had folded under, take that tape off. We're going to line that folded line up with that mark we just made, like so. Remember we have this mark here as well. That is going to give us a guide for our stitching. So, and then we're going to go stitch these on. I'm going to pull my threads long, tie them off in the back. We're going to go across here, up, across that line that we drew previously, and down for both. Okay, so again, I'm pulling my threads long so I can tie them off in the back. You can backstitch as well. If you're not tying your threads off, make sure you backstitch well. And across that line, I'm going to pull that thread back quickly. Okay. If you're tying them off, make sure you end your last stitch with your needle in the first hole. Right there. Pull your threads long and tie them off. Whew. The size swag thread is a very, very flammable, just so you guys know. Do you know what? I skipped a stitch. I'm going to have to backstitch. Man. Oh well, I'm going to backstitch it. I skipped a stitch somehow. That's okay. Not a big deal. I'll just have a backstitch. We do not want a skip stitch, that's for sure. That never happens on this machine. How bizarre. How bizarre, how bizarre. So I'm going to backstitch on the other one just so it's consistent. No more tying off threads, but we need that thread to be secure, so it's all good. Okay, and the same with the opposite side. think it's because I didn't bring my needle up enough when I pivoted, which made it kind of skip a stitch there. All right. She looks lovely. Perfect. Okay, so that's done. So again, for homework, you're going to go ahead and we're going to put a rivet in the center. Make sure back to scraps of heavy stabilizer, and then a rivet in the center up here as well. And that'll make those connectors extra secure. Okay, so now we are moving on to the lining pockets. We're going to work on our laptop sleeve. So this is one where you should have had some foam on the exterior of it. Now you want to make sure these are situated properly. So the top should be the shortest width, and there's only a very small amount. So make sure the shortest width that we are working with at the top, which is that one. What we're going to do, again, make sure they're both the same. We're going to take the two of the laptop sleeve pieces and we're going to put them right sides together, very similar to how we did the trolley sleeve. So clip across the top and clip across the bottom. And the bottom as well. And what the foam in this does is it just gives that laptop a little extra padding. And then we're going to sew across the top and the bottom edges with the seam allowance stated on page 35 as step 1. Oopsies. Stay where you need to go. There we go. Okay, and then go ahead and turn that tube out. And then roll those seams between your fingers because we are going to top stitch along the 2 seams. So this laptop sleeve leaves the bottom open, just so you guys know. And that's just to help accommodate different sizes of laptops, and it just holds it in place in the bag. So it's a laptop sleeve, not a laptop pocket. So this will have cushioning. We have the foam on the exterior, and then the back side we don't have foam in, but our bag is interfaced with foam, so it will have that padding there as well for the front and the back of the laptop. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and top stitch down those sides. We're going to baste these sides as well. So I'm going to top stitch, baste, just so everything is one piece. I'll start with my basting on the side. Top stitch. Baste. Okay, so trim up anything that may be overhanging. Like I got a little bit of overhang here. Just trim that up. Okay, now we want to take our lining back panel, and you will see, let me find it here. On page 35, step 5, it tells us how much to measure up from the bottom. And then we're going to clip these sides together. And I can see that I may have cut my lining piece a little bit too big, but that's okay. It all gets caught in that seam allowance. So clip it all along that side. Making sure we're nice and straight. Yeah, my cutting is way off. Look how bad it is down here. Oh my gosh, let's fix that right now. Oh, Brandy. The opposite side. Again, you can see how bad my cutting is. Like it goes way off. I'm just going to trim up my cutting here. This is me just cutting really, really crooked and too much. And then we can go ahead and we can baste this onto the sides. And make sure it looks nice and straight. Measure down from the top. Yep, my top is even cut bad. Oh my gosh. I'll straighten that out. There we go. I do admit I always get lazy when I cut my linings. You guys know me for that for sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and baste those in place. Just gonna trim this up a little bit because I'm off here. Oh no, there we go. We're good. Don't baste across the bottom, just on the sides. All right. So that is our laptop sleeve all done. So we can set that aside for now. And then go ahead and grab out your bottle sleeves and your side panels, lining side panels. Okay, so we have our two side panels, which are these ones, and our bottle sleeves. I'm doing two bottle sleeves in this one, or you can do one. So we are on page 35, step D. What we want to do is we want to make sure we have this going the right way. So let me see. So this top part, the narrow part is the top, and we want it running this way. We're going to take these just like we did with the laptop sleeves and with that and the trailer sleeve. We're going to fold this up, bringing it right sides together and clip along that top. We're going to do both at the exact same time if you're doing two like me. So again, short end to short end, bring it up. We're going to sew across these with the seam allowance stated in step 1. And then while we're at the machine, we're going to turn the tubes through and then top stitch the top and the bottoms, just like we did with the laptop sleeve. So exactly the same, just different pieces. I'm going to chain stitch them. Okay, turn these right sides through. I'm actually going to run these over to the iron, and I'm going to give it a good press and then top stitch. That's one. Okay, so bear with me while I run over to the iron to give these a press, and then we'll come back to the machine and we will do this. One moment. Only press them if you are using cotton like me, of course. I guess you could press them with your waterproof canvas as long as you're only doing the right sides. Go. Okay, and then top stitch the two finished edges. I'm going to chain stitch them again. And just so I don't have to break my thread, I'm going to come down this raw edge and then chain stitch the other sides. Doesn't save that much time, but it saves me enough time and it saves me thread. So Okay, so those are those. Go ahead and trim off any excess if you have bag cutting like me. That's good. Okay, now we're going to take our two sides, and you're going to see on page 35, step bottle sleeve section D, step 3, where you're measuring up from the bottom. Go ahead and also mark your top and bottom centers of your side pieces. Actually, before we go any further, I want to do some marking because it'll just be easier to do it. No, never mind. Let me see. No, we can do that now. Before we do that, we're going to do some marking on these just because it's going to make it a little bit easier while it's flat before we have those bottle sleeves on. So on these side pieces, on the top of your sides, if you look at page 36, step 9, actually that's for the exterior. I'm pretty sure the lining is the same. Sorry, page 38, step 10. What we're going to do is we're going to measure down from the top, so that measurement that's in step 1, and draw a line. This bag is interesting because it is birthed, but the side sections are like a drop-in lining. So that's what we're prepping these top parts for. And in these bottom corners, you want to draw, it says to draw a line, but I'm actually going to draw a box with that measurement that is in step 3 of that. Just so I don't mix up my top and bottoms. Okay, same with the other one. Okay, and then we're going to backtrack. Sorry about that, guys. I just find it a lot easier to do these markings before we have the sleeves on. Okay. So now back to page 35, step 3 of section D. Where's my ruler? We're going to measure up as, oops, make sure you're working on the bottom, measure up as per the bottom. And we're going to take our sleeves. I'm going to make some marks actually. Oops. Just so they don't go away and I can see them. Same with the other one. If you're doing 2. Okay, so we have our side panels right side up and our bottle sleeve right side up. And we are going to line the bottom of the sleeve up with on the one side with the one side at that line that we drew. Clip it in place, and it is longer. And we're going to take the other side and you're going to bring it up, and this is making room for our bottles. Bring it up and line up the raw edges at that line from the bottom and clip in place. So this is what that looks like. Do the same with the opposite side. And then we're going to go ahead and base those in place. All right, so that is the bottle sleeves done. Now I just went ahead already. I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to assemble our lining pieces. So this would have been homework, but I already went ahead and did it. So if you're putting in slip pockets and a zipper pocket into one of your lining panels, well, you will need the zipper pocket because we need that for finishing the bag. Pause the video now and go ahead and do those. I've done my slip pocket different than the pattern. I did it my usual way, so you can either do it as per the pattern or what have you. When you go and do your zipper pocket, make sure you leave the bottom open, okay? So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and we will be putting the lining together. All right, here we go. So we're gonna do some marking. So on the back of our lining panels, just like we did these little boxes or lines, so that measurement, let's see, yeah, that same measurement that we used for the side panels, we want to put on the bottom of these as well, of our lining exterior panels. So draw those boxes. We're doing Y seams, which we've done many times before. Now, when we go to do the exterior next week, we'll be doing the same thing, but these little marks will be narrower and smaller because we are making our lining smaller than our exterior. So do those marks. Okay, make sure you have your top and bottom centers marked. Okay, now for these side seams, that line that we drew on the top there, we want to prep those for the drop-in lining aspect of that. So you can use tape, or if you're using cotton, you can go ahead and press this. So we're going to fold those top edges into that line. Just of the side panels. And you can give that a good press with your iron if you prefer to not use the tape, but the tape's not going to be where we're top stitching later anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. So you just want to have a nice finished edge there. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start with my back panel with my laptop sleeve on it. Now we're going to put these right sides together. So you're going to kind of want to make sure your laptop sleeve is not going to get this excess cotton or anything. So what I like to do is I just like to kind of fold it upon itself so the lining is laying flat, and take a clip and just stick a clip in there to kind of hold it where it needs to be. So it's not going to accidentally come over and get stuck in anything. Okay, so you're going to see our side panel is shorter than our main panel. That is exactly what we want. Make sure you have your laptop sleeve the right way, so there should be more fabric at the top than at the bottom. What we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to put them right sides together. And we're going to clip. So again, it won't come right to the top. That finished edge that we folded over will be lower than the rest. Okay, we're going to do the same with the opposite side at the same time. So again, I'm going to take my bottle sleeve, if you have two like me, just going to kind of fold it upon each other so it's all flat and out of the way like so. With some clips. Okay, put one on the bottom too. I used EB Fuse medium, so my fabric is super thick. Okay, and then we're going to take this one and we're going to put it right sides together with the opposite side. Again, matching up the bottom. Okay, now let me find in the pattern our seam allowances, what we will be doing. So if you look at page 38, step 7, you're going to see we're going to start with that seam allowance that's stated there to about here-ish, and then we're going to branch out into this larger seam allowance, and that the larger seam allowance is actually this box. So from the top, you're going to come down about a third of the way at that first seam allowance. And then we're going to branch out to the bigger one, stopping at our boxes and back stitching well on both sides. We do not want to sew these bottom corners together. So you got to make sure you stop at this. So again, the smaller seam allowance, about a third of the way down, branch out into the larger seam allowance for both sides. So there's multiple seam allowances in this pattern, so definitely make sure you're checking those seam allowances out, because I cannot tell you what those seam allowances are. That's not allowed anymore. Okay. I'm starting in that larger seam allowance. Add it. Now it's very important that this top seam allowance is accurate, because we need it to fit into our exterior later, have the same circumference. So if you're off a little bit when you go to branch it out, and that is fine, that won't affect anything. Okay, so I'm about a third of the way down. So now I'm going to branch out into that larger seam allowance the rest of the way. And this section is thick if you've done the laptop sleeve and the boat or the bottle sleeves. When you get to that box, back stitch well. Don't go past the box though. Back stitch well. Okay, whoop. Same with the opposite side. So from this side, just because it'll be easier on my machine, I'm going to start at that box. So I'm starting with the larger seam allowances because I am at the bottom of the bag now, just because it's easier to not have as much in the throat of my machine. I'm going to back stitch well at that box. I'm going to sew with this larger seam allowance to about 2/3 of the way to the top. And then I'm going to start branching into that smaller seam allowance to keep that circumference the same as what the exterior will be. And again, this is just going to make it so the lining isn't floppy. It's going to be slightly smaller than the exterior, so it won't be as floppy inside of the bag. All right. Okay, so if you've done this right, you can see it's smaller and then it gets bigger, and these corners should be unsewn. Now, does it tell us to trim this at all? Let me double check. Okay, so we can trim up some of the seam allowances, but we do not want to trim up. Okay, so if you look in step 10 of that page, it tells you where we don't want to trim up. So I'm going to make lines because I'm not going to trim past there. Or past there. So just in between those marks, you can go ahead and trim up some of that excess. But do not trim past those marks that are stated in the pattern there. So like that. I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, just like so. And now we're going to do the same and attach the other side in the exact same fashion. So I'm going to match up the bottoms. Again, it won't come all the way to the top. And I'm going to clip the other side at the same time, and then we can do it all at the machine at once. Get out of there. So match up the bottoms again. Okay, and then let's go over to the machine and sew up the last two sides. Again, remembering to branch out and all that. So this side, I am starting with the bottom. So I will be with that larger seam allowance first and branching up as I reach the top to the regular seam allowance. And I'm going to branch in. It's getting too big for my desk, to that smaller seam allowance. One side done. This one I'm starting at the top, so I'll be at that smaller seam allowance. About a third of the way down, start branching into that larger seam allowance, stopping at those boxes. Oops, dropping stuff on the floor. All right. All right, so this is what we got. We can take out those clips. I think that was what fell on the floor, was one of those clips. Now we are going to take our bottom piece. Now we want to find our centers on the sides and our centers along the long sides. So all four centers. And I'm just, no, we should be good. Oh, we might have to change the foam on those side panels for my exteriors. I'll show you guys why. Just thinking back. So we're going to draw on all four corners of that same box we drew on the other ones at that larger seam allowance, because it is the lining at the bottom. It'll be the larger seam allowance. Okay, now we're only going to be sewing on one side of this. So I am going to sew it, I guess it doesn't really matter. Oh, first let's trim. Trim, trim, trim. So again, trim your sides in between where we're allowed to do it. Again, I'm just eyeballing it. Yeah, I forgot that the sides were like a drop-in lining, so we're gonna have to trim some of that foam away on those exterior panels, but we'll get there. My brain is just going all over the place right now. So, okay, so I'm gonna say on the side that has the laptop sleeve, we're gonna take our exterior or our lining bottom, and we're gonna stick it inside, right sides together, and we're gonna line up the straight edge. So we're gonna kind of pull apart these corners here, so this can go in here. This is part of making that Y seam. Match up that center just on the one side. And just sewing on this one side, because we're leaving the bottom completely open for turning to save our arms. But sewing on this one side of the lining just means one side that we do not have to sew through the pocket. So it just makes it a lot easier. So once you have this on, we're going to go ahead and sew with that larger seam allowance from box to box, backstitching well. So again, make sure you're only sewing through the two panels. You kind of want to make your seams kind of be feathered out like so you're not catching that side panel in it. From box to box, backstitch well. And backstitch well at the other side. Woo. You can trim that seam allowance if you want to. I'm not going to worry about it on the bottoms. It's too hard to trim the seam allowance through the pocket later on, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, so that is our lining complete. So you have your bottom completely open still, and that is what your lining is going to look like. Now, if you can pull out your side panels, again, this was an afterthought of mine. Because we're going to be folding in these edges, we want this foam out of the way. So we actually want to trim the foam up equally to where our boxes were. So I'm just going to go like this to take that foam out, and I'm going to unpick the foam here. It's easy fix. I forgot totally that this was going to be the way it was on these sides, which I shouldn't because I've made so many of these, but and that's just going to make it a lot easier, trust me, when it comes to folding in those sides. So yeah, pick the foam off the other one the same way. It doesn't take very long to fix it. There we go, already fixed. And I am going to once again, just take a little bit of tape just to hold that foam in place. All right. So all this for homework is the rivets, as well as I'm going to get you guys, because I can't share the markings, like the measurements or anything like that. So I'm going to get you to do all of the exterior markings, which is done very similar to how we did the linings. So if you are looking at the exterior assembly page on page 36, it tells you all of the markings to do. So if for homework, you can do those markings as well as the rivets. And then we'll get the exterior assembled, and then we're putting the lining and the exterior together, and that'll all be the last class. Thanks again, everybody. I will see you next week.